as my therapist says, life is the ultimate autocorrect, and will tell you when you're out of balance. And I think
Oh,
and I think
wow.
autoimmune diseases are just that. They're showing you that you're out of balance somewhere. And that's not a very sexy or trendy philosophical approach to it, but I think that's what it is. It's not your body attacking you because it hates you or you're broken or you did something wrong. It's just kind of a wake up call, right?
Yeah.
But it's not your fault. It's the healing is in your power, and this is a lifestyle driven condition. And like I say all the time, the version of you that got you sick cannot be the same version that gets you better.
Welcome to the Balanced Fit and Free podcast, the podcast that goes beyond surface level wellness to explore the deep connection between inner healing and outer health. I'm your host, Rayanne Mullins, and I'm here to guide you on a journey of authenticity, intuition, and living aligned with your true purpose. Together, we'll uncover how nourishing your mind and soul leads to vibrant health and lasting happiness. Let's dive in. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Balanced Fit and Free podcast. It's Rayanne, your host, and I'm so happy that you're here today. I have a very special episode for you. Today, I'm talking with Justin Janoska. He is from the Autoimmune Revolution. He's a very fascinating, super smart guy who has been really um, helping women, mostly women, reverse their symptoms and heal from autoimmune disorders. So things like Hashimoto's, PCOS, and other conditions like that. I asked him to come on to the Balanced Fit and Free podcast because he speaks a lot about what I've personally experienced with my journey with Hashimoto's and just my personal journey of healing my body and going through different experiences with my weight, with the autoimmune disorders, with stress, with my different personality. I'm going to call them issues, but the way I am. And everything he talks about on his Instagram and his email really just speaks to me. And so I thought he'd be the perfect guest to talk with you all as well. You can follow him on Instagram, and he has a new book out that you can check out too. It's called The Post Dieting Comeback. So it is not about autoimmune, but it has a lot of interesting information that you just might learn from. So without further ado, welcome to Justin. All right. Well, welcome, Justin, to the Balanced Fit and Free podcast.
Good to see you.
Yeah,
Thank you for
you
having me.
too. Yeah, I'm so excited. I was just really excited that you would take time to come be on my podcast. I
Of
love it.
course. I love this.
Um, so we met a while back. I don't even remember what year, a couple of years ago. I think it was pre-COVID at a metabolism workshop, which is what I love, love, love to talk about. And obviously you do too, some.
Hmm.
So I started following you on Instagram that time. And since then, I think you've accomplished a lot of things. So I just would love for you to like share, like like who you are and
Hmm.
like why you do what you do. So why don't we just start with like,
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'd
yeah,
like to think I've accomplished a few things since then. That's probably what, going back 6, 7 years, maybe.
yeah, I
Yeah,
think
it's been a
so.
bit.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, I've been staying on track since, I think. I've pivoted a little bit, which I can get into, but I think when you met me and when if I remember correctly, it was probably maybe at the pinnacle of my um, autoimmune experience with women and clients, and really at the height of what I was doing, and feeling really good about it. And all starting from my mom's journey and her Hashimoto's. And that's how I got my foot in the door, right? I think
Okay.
we all kind of have a reason why we do things. It wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to work with people with terminal cancer, actually. And
Oh,
I wanted to study nutrition and help people with that. But that changed when I started to realize my mom wasn't getting better with conventional medicine and in a large way alternative either, which we can get into. I
right.
have a lot of uh, complaints with both sides of it. And
Good.
no one's
I like
perfect, of course, but there are some major issues and shortcomings and things I've noticed. So I kind of just took it in my own hands and helped her along the way. And this was during grad school and then thereafter. And so when you and I met, I was probably just finishing school about a few years after. And yeah, it was really good. And then I started to see, my mom got better. She's been really great ever since. But it was a long journey, when you've been sick for uh, over 20 years at least, with no, clarity around what you have and why.
Right.
Takes some time. There's a lot of damage that was done, I think. So in any event, so after learning about her story and seeing my clients' stories, I started to put two and two together and really figure out that there was something more going on that I think could be explaining why, like, why they're not getting the best results. I mean, I had clients that would do really well, but some wouldn't. And I think I just started to see that, well, if you're doing all the right things with your medications and your diet and your exercise and your lifestyle habits, what's going on? Why are we not seeing improvements? And I just started to put the pieces together, and I thought, maybe there's some unresolved psycho-emotional injury and wounds, and call it trauma or not. And I thought, stress is a big thing. My mom was very stressed a lot of her life, and
Yeah.
so I saw that. I saw it within clients, and I saw it just kind of subconsciously started to add up in my brain. I thought, maybe this is something I need to look into more. And lo and behold, I think when I started to take them more seriously and say, tell me about your story. What's your biography? How did you get here?
Hmm.
How did you come to be this way? As I ask, that's when it was really like an enlightening moment for me to see that, yeah, there's something else that's energetically um, interfering with recovery, or maybe is explaining why they're having flare-ups and they're not really fully there. It's like you're taking many steps forward, a few steps backward. It's kind of a
Yeah.
lot of this, and you might know, right? And so,
Yeah, I do know personally. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and that was something my mom never got uh, told about or was discussed. It was never about her emotions or her history. No one even asked that question. And to me, that's like the most important thing to ask right away, is to explore your history and your biography. And because you don't get here overnight and it takes
No.
some time. So
Yeah.
that was really a pivotal point for me. And then I started to really, and ever since then, um, really focus on trauma and adverse childhood experiences and that whole world and how that is woven into chronic illness. I mean, obviously, it expands into more than just autoimmunity, but that's my niche, right? So, for me, it's really about Hashimoto's and trauma and putting them together because through a mind body medicine angle, because that's what you have to do.
Mhm.
And that's what I've realized, and that's what yields the best results. And that's just kind of my jam now. And I'm back in school. I'm halfway through my doctor program studying, um, really, it's trauma counseling basically. So it's just
Okay.
another way of learning about the stuff. And yeah, I'm really passionate about this side of it. And of course, there's a lot of layers to this, but in a
Yeah.
nutshell, that's what has happened and where I am today. And it's just great. Love it.
Oh, it's so amazing.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that you cared enough about your mom to pay attention because I mean, at that time, I mean, you're a pretty young guy to be paying attention to your mom's health. I mean, a lot of young people don't pay attention to their
Yeah.
parents. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
It's
Like,
right.
and so that really struck me when I first learned that about you. I was like, I love that you took your mom and like made her like a project, kind of like you wanted to help her.
Right.
And I think that's really awesome. Um, and I love what you said about how a lot of like doctors, and not trying to doctor shame, but um they really don't. It's more about like fixing, or like not fixing, but helping the symptoms versus
Hmm.
like figuring out the root cause and where it's coming from. And so that leads me to say to you that you posted recently. I mean, you've been saying this all along, but one particular post really caught me. And you were mentioning personality types, like people pleasers, um, caretakers. I can't remember all of them, but the people pleaser one popped in my mind. And because I'm that.
Hmm.
And you were like, you're finding that a lot of people in those kind of personality groups are the ones that tend to have autoimmune. Or I mean, I might be saying that wrong, but you know what I mean? Like that's
Hmm.
a group. And just in my experience, like I remember reading your post and being like, "Oh my gosh, I literally checked every single box for what you had listed." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, like I'm totally that." And probably why I have Hashimoto's. But I think like anyway, can you talk a little bit more about that or
Yeah,
what do you
totally.
think?
Yeah, that happened. That kind of revelation came somewhat recently, within the past few years, I guess. And I think it's just something I've really nailed down in my messaging because I just don't, um, rarely do I ever see it not be the case. It's just so ubiquitous, with women, and it resonates obviously because you're speaking to that, right? So my
Yeah.
mom was, my mom's a nurse, so she has caregiving tendencies and people pleasing tendencies a bit, I would say. My whole family does actually. It's so I started to really become more aware of this, and now I can't unsee it. So I just look for it. Um, you see
Yeah.
what you're looking for, right? So I'm just kind of like, trying to see if I'm wrong in any cases. I'm not saying everyone has this, but it's a very common thing.
Yeah.
And it just speaks to the, again, I'll say trauma loosely, but it speaks to something unresolved, I think, or some coping strategy, which is what it is. And it's adaptive. It's necessary. It's helpful. We need it. There's nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong with being a perfectionist, type A, an overachiever, overgiving, peacemaking, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
But my contention is that when it's taken to the extreme, which it does for many people,
Yeah.
and there's no other parts of you that are really taking over and running the show of your life, it's going to create a problem. And there are very few studies, maybe literally one or two I found on the relationship between personality types and type A, um, in autoimmunity. And
Oh,
actually the study I'm thinking about looked at type 1 diabetes and Hashimoto's. So there is something there. And there is some, um, even a paper I read recently was talking about this, and it's I'll read it for you because I actually have it right here. But
okay.
basically, they said that chronic stress, it's associated with suppression of the immune system, of course, in a lot of ways. But interestingly, certain personality styles may enhance or degrade immune responses.
Wow.
So, and they go on to talk about how psychosocial stress and immunity are related, and it's identified in many cases of illnesses like, cancer, but autoimmune disease as well. So,
Yeah.
I didn't need a study to prove that to me. I've already noticed it anecdotally, and so I've already kind of been kind of caught up in that, and I just said, yeah, I mean, this is the stuff that has to be addressed. It's kind of like the hidden, X factor here, maybe in a sense that if that doesn't change, and I'm not saying these have to change completely and you can't have these parts of you ever, but they can't just be front and center all the time in the spotlight. Because if they are, as I just said, it does actually breed stress via stress responses in a way that you're not going to know because it's not actually causing your heart to race necessarily or creating, uh, pain in your chest or symptoms that are really overt. It's low grade, I think, for a lot of people. And especially when you've been living this way for many years, it's subtle. You don't even realize it. So these sort of stressors you have, right, from being a workaholic and running around with, all the
Yep.
time, doing all the things, is putting stress in the body. It's like going to the gym for like 3 hours a day every day for a year, right? You get used to it, and you might think it's normal, but your body says otherwise, and it's
Yeah.
proven. You can prove that through certain biomarkers, and we can talk about that too. But that's the thing I've been trying to speak to, and I'm just saying, that has to change because if it doesn't, you're really never giving your body a chance to heal and recover because you're reinforcing the message of survival mode.
Yeah.
So that's a long-winded answer, but that's my
Oh, I
just.
love it though. I mean, I'm totally following. Well, I'm just gonna give you a little
Hmm.
taste of where it happened with me is like when I owned a fitness studio and I was a major control freak over everything that happened there. I see that now. I didn't see it at the time. I just thought I was trying to be good, and make everybody happy. And so I had the physical stress of teaching like 30 classes a week, plus personal, doing running the
Hmm.
business, do all the things, right? And when I discovered when I found out like many years later, after every doctor, like heart doctor, gastroenterologist, all the things for all the different symptoms, and nobody could figure out what was wrong with me. Finally find out I have Hashimoto's. And at the time I was closing the studio because I just was so burned out. I couldn't handle it anymore. And it's kind of sad now looking back because had maybe I'd gotten help and figured it out sooner, maybe I could have, saved it. But anyway, doesn't matter. So when I did all the things, I went gluten free. I followed all the diet stuff, which I think helped. But I think the biggest thing when I look back is I went from like trying to make every single human happy that I dealt with and teaching all that class to like teaching way less, physically moving less, not having all the customers and the people to deal with. And even though that was hard, it was like I actually think that is what made my like numbers better
Mhm.
because I even though I was doing the dieting and stuff, I truly believe it was like the de-stressing of everything. And that's when I got really interested in learning more about it because I was like, there's something here. But okay, so I'm going to bring it back around as a coach for like weight loss and all that isn't related to autoimmune. Would you agree that I work with women that are chronic dieters, so this kind of goes into the other thing you talk about, the chronic dieting, the over exercising. It's really kind of the same thing, and that's why people have a hard time keeping the weight off or losing weight, and so it creates all this. So tell me a little bit more about that. Like,
The dieting factor. Yeah.
yes,
So I would say that it's um, if I were to compare the personality traits that we're talking about here and chronic dieting and overexercising, I would say the personality stuff wins out. Um, in my experience, again, that's just who I
yeah,
seem to work with and what I see. But I have there's a part of me that really connects with the undereater, the overexerciser, and the person who is really fixated on their body image or just has a difficult relationship with food and themselves.
yeah,
And they go hand in hand a lot. I think that's definitely a thing. I used to see it a lot in the younger women and 20 to 35-ish range. And I think it still, of course, exists in older women as well, right?
yeah,
Because those
yeah,
habits don't really change unless you really do the work. But it does really kind of connect right back to the underlying foundation for all this, whether it's um, people pleasing, perfectionism, performing, whatever that is, and struggling with food and your body image. And it's all just a coping response that to something else. And that something else is something to explore and investigate. But that's the beginning of figuring out the answers to people's health issues, I think, because that's like the missing link I find is that once you start to be curious and learn about this and figure out what's going on and why and connecting the dots, it's like, and then there's an opportunity to make a choice and to work through it. And once you do that, it's like there's a huge 180-degree turnaround for people I see in their healing. And it's like, wow, yeah, I didn't have to do so much. I'm like, I know,
yeah.
because it wasn't about the parasite or the mold. I'm not saying those things aren't real either. Don't get me
Right.
wrong. But it's like, if you've done all that stuff, well, what is it? Well, maybe the block isn't the external environment. Maybe it's not that anymore. It's something within yourself. And
Yeah.
I just say, well, that's why it's hard because you can control
Mhm.
everything out there kind of, but you don't know what's inside. And that's actually what you have control over the most. It's just, we don't want to look
Yeah.
there and we don't want to find
Yeah.
out, or it's scary. Who knows? There's a lot of reasons why we don't do this stuff. I
Yeah.
get it, but I'm just saying if there's going to be any change in your life that you want, and you've done everything in your for years and you're struggling to make progress and to maintain those results, then this is exactly what has to happen.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, for sure. Obviously, the habits of undereating and training more than you should be, with in frequency and intensity and all that is, yeah, it's like putting gasoline on the fire, right? And especially when you're
Mhm.
approaching perimenopause, it's even worse
Mhm.
because you don't have the hormones to act as buffers against stress. And it's actually, I hate to say this, but these habits actually are the exact opposite of what you have to do. It's you
Yeah.
got to go the other direction actually in a lot of ways. And that's one of the key things I'm talking about in my new book here, which we can get into, I guess.
Yes.
But
Yeah, I
that's
definitely
my
want to talk.
thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
because it is an issue, and it's just like, well, if you want to see changes in your symptoms and you have Hashimoto's or some autoimmune disease, you have to look at your habits and your behaviors, and that's just difficult to do, right? You can't Amazon Prime a solution to that, right? That's what we're
Oh,
looking for as a society, right? So it's like,
there's not a pill or a
yeah.
shot
And
for
obviously,
that.
there's a lot of conditioning. So these things are hard to change because they're deeply entrenched in your brain and the neurons and the wiring and all that. So this is the hardest work to do, but it is what I find is to be the kind of the thing that will catapult you to the finish line if you can really if you're willing to look there.
I love that. I believe it so deeply.
Hmm.
And like you, I mean, you just said that about it's a hard thing to change people's thinking because just society is like work harder, push harder, do more. So people are doing more, and they're just like feeling worse and worse.
Hmm.
And you're like, you have to go the opposite way. And so many people are scared to go the opposite way because they don't believe doing less is going
Yeah.
to help them, you know? And so I just had coffee before this with somebody, and the entire conversation was around, oh, I would lose my belly if I would do more cardio. And I'm like, oh, no. So,
No, actually, yeah.
I'm like, it's a little frustrating, but also understandably
Yeah.
why people have a hard time shifting out of that old mindset. But so yeah, you mentioned your book. So
Hmm.
excited. I love it. So the post dieting comeback. I love that title too, by the way.
Thank
So
you.
so
Yeah.
first of all, why? Okay. Well, you can tell us like what the book is about, but also why, like this particular book.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I guess the first question is, well, why hasn't it been about Hashimoto's yet? You know, and I know that'll be the next one, I guess. But I think
Yeah.
this one I had to do because there's a part of me that I have like a soft spot for these sort of um, challenges around food and body image. And I've worked with a lot of young women who, are in college or just out of it. And this was early in my career, and I saw a lot of that. And I didn't know trauma at the time. I didn't even know that it could be a thing and be part of it. But now it's so clear. Like everything that I see now is related to something back then and explains, and the research proves this. There's a lot of citations in here to kind of back this up what I'm saying, but not just sort of what I'm observing. But so coming back to what we're talking about here about chronic dieting. So I'm trying to achieve a lot of things in what I'm trying to communicate here, and not just and so let me take a step back. So if we're talking about women who are whether you have an illness or not, who have been doing this cycle of undereating, eating less, exercising more kind of stuff, depending on how long you're doing it for and all the variables within that, you can
Mhm.
put yourself deep in a hole with hormones crashing and your symptoms pop up like this, and it can push you to something like polycystic ovarian syndrome or Hashimoto's or any other sort of illness. And I make that sort of claim too. And so I'm trying to connect the dots for people to say, all right, look, you can try to lose weight, you can do these things with diet and exercise. Cool, let's make sure we're doing the right things so that we don't end up with this metabolic dysfunction and these severe illness states that are rare, but they do happen. That's why we're talking about it. But also how to fix that issue, which is important because there are a lot of I've worked with women. I don't know about you, Ray, but there are women I've worked with who, I had somebody who I spoke with some time ago who was doing like fasted cycling for 10 years. I'm like, yeah, eventually that's going to catch up, and it did. And people are on HRT and they're not seeing their body change. It's like a year or two of this. I'm like, yeah, because it takes a while for your body to kind of like
Yeah.
recover. And it's really tough mentally because women are like, I'm doing all the right things. I'm meditating, I'm walking, I'm doing sauna, I'm da 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 da. I'm like, I
Hmm.
know, but unfortunately, you can't just flip a switch and be like, okay, we're good now. We can lose weight again. So there's a
Yeah.
huge price to pay for this type of lifestyle. So my whole idea is like, well, if I can help people see the reality of this and see how devastating it could be if you don't figure this out and take,
Yeah.
precautionary measures now and do things the right way, it's going to save a lot of emotional the heartache and pain, I think. And then also what I'm doing here is tying it into childhood adversity, trauma, upbringing, these kinds of things, and how that really is the foundation for a lot of this. Not everybody, but again, only you can decide if that's true or not. But I know I see it, and I know that there's a lot of research around this with body dysmorphia and poor relationship with food, disordered eating, eating disorders, of course, pretty much always related to trauma. So, and then you get those people sometimes who have those conditions, a lot those situations with um, PCOS and autoimmunity and fibromyalgia and dysautonomia. It's not by accident. It's all related. So I'm just trying to connect the dots here for people.
Yeah.
So that's the whole idea with this goal with this book. And then the last chapter is actually the most important because it's called an identity shift. So it's really about well, figuring out why you do all this and learning about yourself and deciding if it's now time to make a change and to, really, really, it's an invitation to look at your identity and what you've been, in a sense, attached to, like we all are, with our ego,
Yeah.
and seeing if there's a reason to hold on to that, or if we can start to shed some of this and become, the, as we call, the authentic, higher, wiser self, that the next level human self, we might say,
Yeah.
that is what's required in order for you to prevent these issues from happening again and to actually live with abundance and joy and feel alive and the things we want to have, fulfillment.
Yeah.
So, it's there's a lot, obviously, but I'm really passionate about kind of drawing this together for people so that you can see, you know, observe, like, where do I fit on this spectrum or on this path, right?
Yeah.
And if I'm in trouble, what can I do to fix it? Which is the whole premise of the book. But I'm also adding in all these other things to, make my argument.
I love it. That right there is why I wanted you to come talk to us, because that's what this whole season of the podcast is about, is becoming you, your
Hmm.
true self. And I love that you talk about the parts work kind of. Um, and that's, yeah. And I just want to throw in there, as you were talking, I was thinking, I personally, anytime I have like an autoimmune flare, or like something's happening with my weight, or something's changing in my body that I don't feel good about, I can truly pinpoint now, like, which part is leading me.
Yeah.
And I know, like, for people that don't really look into this, don't understand, but I know now, like, who I am versus like my protectors parts and stuff.
Hmm.
And so that whole shifting the identity thing, that you say that so well, so well. And so I definitely think everybody needs to be following you. I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
And I
Thank
love,
you.
though, that you back it up in your book too with a lot of good citations and studies. And you're always really good about showing that. And I love that as well. So very well. Um, well, so how can people find you?
Why?
Or
I guess.
how do you want them? Or who do you want to find you?
Well, I guess Instagram is the easiest place because that's mostly where I hang out, and that's
Okay.
actually where you can find more things with. I give a lot of stuff out because that's what I want to do, is just help people. So I have a lot of free resources and things I give out like almost every week in a sense. So it's also in my bio, but that's where you that's where you would probably want to find me to get
Okay.
a hold of those kinds of things. Just my name, at Justin Janoska,
Okay. And
Janoska. Yeah.
I'll be sure to link that in the show
Yeah.
notes as well. And also your book. I know I got it on Amazon, I think.
Yeah.
Is
It's on
that right?
Amazon.
Probably. Um, well, I think you're doing really great work. I'm so excited about it. And I appreciate you taking time to come tell us your knowledge. Oh, wait, I have one more question. Two more
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah.
Number one, I was going to say goodbye, and I was like, wait, I have two questions. First question is, you talk a lot about women. Do you work with men at all?
Yeah, I do. It's rare.
Because,
It's not because I don't want to. It's also I think we know that autoimmunity is a little bit biased towards women, so there's that.
yeah.
Also, my experience in training is in women's health. I know very little about men's health, although I probably should start learning about it. Um,
Well, you do
you
know. You
know,
just, yeah.
yeah, I do. It's just, I'm very particular with who I work with because I know who I can help and who I can't.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to be like this, but uh, there are men who are, I think the challenge is that there are many men who are, no, they're the last to accept that they have a health problem or something and to come forward and address it, right? I'm also just very careful because if people aren't serious about this and wanting to, work on themselves, it's not probably a good fit, right? So,
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but I think just women are a little bit more conscientious and care, and so I just
Yeah.
connect with women better with this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think you're right though with women. I mean, mostly it's women who are going to the doctor more or like being a little bit more like wanting to find out what's going on.
Hmm.
Whereas men are like, unfortunately, I think have been taught to suck it up.
Yeah.
Like everything's
Right.
fine. So I get it. So I was just curious because we had only talked about women. I thought, I just didn't know. But
Yeah.
okay, here's the big question for you.
Yeah.
If somebody were to come to you, or if somebody was just diagnosed with any autoimmune, what would be the thing you would tell them to do first?
I got a
No,
couple
there's more.
things,
Okay.
but yeah, this might be a bit of a a long
Put you
explanation,
on the
but
spot here.
yeah, yeah, that's good. It's good. Okay, so the first thing I would say, just because I think from an educational standpoint, we need to get this clear when it comes to autoimmune disease. So there are two main causes, we'll say, that I like to describe because it makes it easy to understand for the layperson or someone who doesn't know much about it.
Okay.
Um, there is an issue with suppressed immunity, which I think
Okay.
is due to chronic emotional and physical stress, like we're talking about here, often beginning in childhood.
Okay.
And secondly, increased inflammation driven by environmental exposures. Oftentimes they go together. And so
Okay.
we're always looking at the second part of it with the environment. My contention is that we need to start looking at in our history and our past and what could be contributing to the immune dysfunction as well. So we
Yes.
hit both sides of the equation. Where a lot of times it's just one side. So there's
Okay.
that. Autoimmune
Love it.
disease is not a life sentence. It's honestly because people think it's genetic. It's genetics are the reason why they got here. It's not. It's an encrypted message from your higher self, I think, in a lot of ways, telling you where to look.
Hmm.
As my therapist says, life is the ultimate autocorrect and will tell you when you're out of balance. And I think
Oh,
and I think
wow.
autoimmune diseases are just that. They're showing you that you're out of balance somewhere. And that's not a very sexy or trendy philosophical approach to it, but I think that's what it is. It's not your body attacking you because it hates you or you're broken or you did something wrong. It's just kind of a wake up call, right?
Yeah.
But it's not your fault. It's the healing is in your power, and this is a lifestyle driven condition. And like I say all the time, the version of you that got you sick cannot be the same version that gets you better.
Right.
You have to shift your consciousness, your perception, your relationship with your pain, your symptoms, your disease itself, and most importantly, your relationship with you.
Yeah.
You can follow the right protocols, you can eat clean, take supplements, exercise, do medications, all that jazz, but if you don't address the inner world, the energetic state, if you're living in fear-based emotions, nothing's really going to change, and that's been my experience too.
Yeah.
So, um, this is what is less talked about. And that's why I'm mentioning it because we could do ourselves a huge favor by starting to have these discussions and being curious about the negative self-talk, the, acidic emotions or the unprocessed trauma that are still heavy burdens on our system and interfering with immune regulation,
Yeah.
right? So how did you get here? That's the first thing we should be asking is how did I come to be this way? Less is
Oh,
more. Healing doesn't require doing everything you see online. You can,
no.
you know, there's a lot out
No.
there, but you don't need to do it all, right?
Yeah.
You need a mind-body medicine approach. And lastly, kind of if you're someone who is constantly running on empty, always busy, pushing through, it's indispensable, I think, required to slow down and learn what that could feel like. That's why I talk about a lot of the time silence, solitude, and stillness because those are your best friends. However
Wow.
you want to do
Yeah.
that is up to you, but you need some of that. So it's really about tapping into that. And your symptoms tell a story. And so do your
Yeah.
behaviors, your coping strategies, your personality traits. And all of this healing stuff is possible, but it just starts with you listening to it.
And I think you could do a mic drop right there. I love it.
Yeah,
I'm like, thank you, because you're saying, I love all this. I love it.
cool.
And I couldn't agree more. I mean, just you're the expert, but I feel like I totally agree. Well, again, thank you. That is a great place to stop, I think. And I appreciate your time. And I will definitely be linking your book and you have a podcast too.
Yeah, I do. It's just me rambling with by myself. It's called
Great.
Autoimmune Revolution Radio, but it's about all these kinds of topics. Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Good. So I'll definitely make sure people can find you that need you. And again, thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Balanced Fit and Free podcast. Remember, the key to a balanced life starts within. If you enjoyed today's discussion, please subscribe, share, and leave a review to help others on their journey. Until next time, stay true to yourself and keep living balanced, fit, and free.